We got the stream up. Oh,
So,
I see things.
so now that happened, we'll retweet that we're going live this time, guys. Alright.
Hello.
Fucking OBS, man. What the hell?
You guys missed a great show.
It was 20 minutes.
It was
could have been far
phenomenal.
worse.
All my jokes were amazing. But we will redo it just for you. But I can't promise that my jokes will be as good this time.
You didn't miss anything, guys. Well, anyways, now that OBS actually decided to go through with it and not just like keep it highlighted, let's go ahead and do a show. I'm not gonna do any sounders, so you guys don't get that whole ordeal. But hello, welcome back to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with a deadeye on all the latest Overwatch League news, information, and esports analysis. I am your host, Totally Drunk, and tonight on episode 87, we'll be discussing the latest in Overwatch League news, share our thoughts on Stage 3, Week 5 in our post-game discussion, and look ahead at all of the matchups for our Stage 3 playoffs. Now, before we can get into the light week of news and introduce you to my co-host, let me just take a moment to thank everyone who has toughed it out on Twitch after our OBS snafu for the past 25-odd minutes, and of course thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So as you can tell, now that we are live, joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Spider. And Spider, we're just gonna forget the last 25 minutes, and talk about the week that was. So I'll be honest, like it's been a slow news week. We had the Atlanta homestand, we had a roster lock, we've had no roster sign-ins, and we're patiently waiting, like, the summer update with everything that's going to be happening in-game, whether that's a 2-2-2 lock, new hero, changes to summer games, all of that stuff. But looking back at the week that was, how has this week been treating you?
Honestly, the show not going live the first time was probably the most exciting thing that's happened to me all week.
That's pathetic.
Yeah, well, wait till you hear about my week. So after the last show, we did our 1v1s on Wednesday night, which I promptly lost a hammer duel to Edinar. And since then, my wife has left me. I've lost my job. And my car caught on fire. The worst thing that happened out of all that is I lost to Edinar in a 1v1. And my shame knows no bounds. But I did bounce back. So none of that actually happened except for losing to Edinar. So that is the shame that I have. But I did promptly stomp him at a Widowmaker headshot duel. After you two had gone to Sniper Wars, and then you and I did Hanzo, which we missed many shots.
Yeah, I will say with the Hanzo one, the way that I play Hanzo does not fare well in a 1v1.
My favorite thing to come out of the Hanzo duel was the one where we just agreed to run up the stairs and just storm arrow each other in the face. Like we set out, and I basically said, all right, walk up the stairs, storm arrow, no shenanigans, just who hits the most shots wins. So that was fun. But speaking of Overwatch League, it was an interesting weekend at the homestand. We'll talk into a lot of that. There was probably one good match the whole weekend, and luckily it was the one match that really mattered. And we'll talk about that. But with 4th of July and all that going on, how was your past weekend?
I was pretty busy, obviously, with the holiday. I actually had like a cookout and a pool party yesterday to kind of like celebrate with the family, so that was a good time. And I did manage to escape for a bit and catch those days worth of games. Towards the tail end of that when people were cycling out. But it was a pretty good week, and speaking of those 1v1s, I will say, like, we did learn a couple of things about the Torb Hammer 1v1 ahead of, the Defrand versus Mangachu one, like how terrible jumping is in that situation, or, trying to bait out certain abilities. And I will say, like, across the board, Ed and I both finished, I want to say we both went 2-3. Your sole loss was to Ed in the Torb Hammer 1v1. But, it was very interesting, like, facing Ed in a Widowmaker duel. Like, after, like, seeing him face you and, like, when I would spectate Ed, I can't tell you how many times, like, I was watching, and then, like, Ed would be looking in one direction, and, whether it was me facing him or you facing him, he'd be looking at a completely different direction, like from where we're at. So that was entertaining, and he did have the upper hand in the in a Doomfist 1v1, which was like kind of like a neutral fight. But across the board, those 1v1s were pretty fun, and hopefully we'll be able to build off of that, maybe challenge other community members and throw that stuff up on our YouTube. But if you guys want to check that out, it is on our Twitch VODs as well as on our YouTube channel. But we're not here to talk about our 1v1s. We're here to talk about the Overwatch League, or attempt to. Like, it was a light news week. So that being said, we do have a little bit of news out of the Path to Pro scene. The first one being with the Guangzhou Charge, who have kind of like gone back to fielding an academy team. So they've gone out and acquired T1W, which are also known as the One Winner. So moving forward, they will be the Guangzhou Charge Academy team, and they'll be rebranded to T1W.GZA. Now, as I mentioned, this is the Charge's second go at an academy team, with their prior one just completely flopping. They did not secure a single match win. They got relegated to trials, which they opted not to play in. And then, they go out and they sign one of the best Chinese teams that is available right now. So when we look back, T1W has been very consistent. They've been in the Contender China playoffs basically every season. And they have failed to, not make it into the semifinals basically every season. So they're constantly a presence and a force to be reckoned with, and they were actually the top finishers in their region when it comes to the Pacific Showdown, which of course pitted some of the best contenders teams from across the globe against one another. But they did take, Season 3 of 2018 in Contenders China. They finished in 3rd place in the Pacific Showdown. And when we look at the Charge, this is a team that does like to try to keep things in-house. As a matter of fact, we did see some of their two-way players who had been competing with their academy team prior, both Only Wish and Rise, make their Overwatch League debuts here in a Mat 4 situation. So, they got a little bit of play time there. Not just on stage, but also during the homestand, which was nice to see. And, they did actually pick up the win there because it was a 4-0. There were really a lot of 4-0s that day, this week. But after flopping so bad, what better way than to go out and acquire one of the most consistent teams that were available in that region? And, T1W is just a perfect fit for this team, and I'm expecting a complete 180 in regards to the results that they are going to get from their academy with this signing.
Yeah, I mean, this is entirely them saying, we don't want our team to get relegated, so we're going to drop that team and then suddenly buy a new team, which I guess is a good way to go about it. And if you're going to buy one, why not buy one of the better ones? I mean, like you said, they had the highest finish in the Pacific Showdown of the Chinese teams. So it's looking good for Guangzhou. I mean, I've always been a big supporter of the academy teams. I think all teams should have academy teams just for the sake of being able to pull talent. And Guangzhou, it really surprised me just knowing their culture and seeing how their team operates that they dropped their academy team. But now that they've acquired T1W, it doesn't surprise me anymore, because it seems like they were like, oh, our team is terrible. Let's get rid of them and let's buy the good team, and then we'll pull from them. So now it doesn't surprise me so much. So I think this was a good move all around. I mean, T1W gets the backing of an Overwatch League team, and Guangzhou gets a really good academy team. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, and it does seem, too, like we're starting to see, like, this path to pro, at least with these academy teams, being more as, a farm system, because a lot more teams are keeping things in-house, just going for straight promotions from their academy team to their main team in the Overwatch League, as opposed to just kind of random sign-ins like we had seen during the inaugural season. So I'm happy to see that, just because, like, we're not really seeing, like, the, like, promotion, so to speak, of going from a contenders team to an academy team to then being eventually signed to the Overwatch League. So I'm really anxious to see whether or not that trend is going to continue as, the league continues to progress and grow over time. But, speaking of contenders, this is not the only news that we had coming out of the Path to Pro. We do have an update on someone that is rumored to be joining one of the elite teams in the Overwatch League. So let's take a look at what's been going down in Grunto Esports. outside of the hard blue drama and all of that stuff. But that being said, they did sign Spectral, so I'm excited to see him move from EU contenders from Angry Titans to NA. But Tizzy had left Grunto Esports earlier in the week, and, in that tweet, they basically teased that he would be joining a new team fairly soon. Now, the rumor going around that was reported by the Game House is that the former Grunto main tank is set to join the Overwatch League, specifically the Vancouver Titans for Stage 4 of the Overwatch League. And should this happen, that would mean that Tizzy will be reuniting with former Runaway members Stitch, Hoxel, Janu, and Bumper. Now, when we look back, Tizzy had played with Runaway back in 2017, before he had left the team to join the London Spitfire for the inaugural season. And of course, he basically had like a backup role there. And following his stint with the Spitfire, he had played for a couple of different contenders teams, kind of bounced around between academy teams. At one point, he was with XL2. He was also on that winless Guangzhou Academy team that we aforementioned before he started to compete with Grunto, where he did secure wins in the matches that he did play. So either way, should this happen, and again, the roster lock happened yesterday. We were hoping to have a couple of announcements in regards to official sign-ins. Unfortunately, that has not happened. So, it could be a matter of them, maybe waiting for him to get a visa. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if Grunto, had a team house or anything like that. But when it comes to the sign-ins, not all of them are announced immediately, and, this could be the case should it happen. But either way, should Tizzy move to reunite with his former Runaway members, it would mean that he would be serving as a backup for the Titans, as Bumper is basically the man that team is built around, because it has a very specific playstyle for that team.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I don't see Tizzy in any role other than a backup for Bumper. I will say it is interesting that Overwatch League can't seem to get rid of this guy. He was in, season 1, didn't see stage time, and now he could possibly be in season 2, and possibly not see stage time. Although Vancouver has a lot of wiggle room, just because of the fact that they could lose all their games this stage and still be in the top 6. So, we could see him come in and, a map 4 here or there, or they may even put him in alongside Bumper and let Bumper just play DPS for a map. Who knows what the Titans are going to do, just because they're a wacky team when they want to be. Maybe not to the extent of Chengdu, but they've done some funny stuff like 5 DPS and stuff like that. So it's interesting to me. I mean, really what this says to me is they were like, hey, we need a backup main tank. We used to be friends with this Tizzy guy. He's a decent backup main tank. Let's just sign him, get him back in the Overwatch League, and then he can reunite with all his old pals. And that's what it looks like to me. It looks like, the runaway in your veins stays in your veins no matter what happens, it seems. So I'm not upset by this trade, but it does make me wonder what's going to happen to Grunto at this point, because Grunto also parted ways with Harblu the past week, not so amicably, but that's like a whole nother set of drama. But I really wonder what's going on in Grunto, and if you're kind of thrown back by Grunto because that's like a recent name, they were Chicken Contendies, so they've actually been in contenders for quite a while, and outside of maybe Sky Foxes, they have like the highest player turnover rate, player and coaching turnover rate. So I'm curious to see what like their plan moving forward is, and I wouldn't be surprised if we learn more drama coming out of them, because it does seem like there's a interesting culture going on in that team right now. So I don't think this affects the Overwatch League level that much, but I think this is a big effect on the contenders level. So I'm curious to see what's going on with Grunto moving forward.
Yeah, well, if Tizzy ends up getting signed and just sitting on the bench, we don't necessarily have the best track record with people that are on bench actually staying in the league, because a lot of them have been opting to just retire outright, like the LA Valiant main tank Kuki did in this last week. So Kuki had joined the LA Valiant before the 2019 season, as a substitute main tank, which is funny because he didn't actually ever tank for this team. He did, however, play in Stage 1 as their main support player, back when Custa was too smart to play 3-3 with the rest of his team because he's too big brain. Or all that BS. You know, whatever thing they were trying to show. But regardless, this is a main tank who had in the prior season played for the Seoul Dynasty, also as a backup. You know, even at one point, the confidence wasn't quite there because we did have the whole Ryu J. Khan experiment going on. That was also the same season where we got to see Tank Moo, all of that shenanery. But Kuki basically got subbed in for the entirety of Stage 1 over Custa. And that was when the Valiant ended up going winless, and he would return to that substitute main tank role, but never actually saw stage time on his actual position. But this does kind of continue the trend for the Valiant, where they have started to move towards that majority Western roster, as at this point, they only have a couple of Korean players left on that lineup following the departure of Fate and now Kuki.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another line of another Korean player leaving the Valiant after Moon left. So it seems like Moon was kind of the core of that Korean side of that roster. And since he's gone, they've dropped Fate, they've dropped Bunny, and now Kuki has stepped away, which to me says like the Valiant are clearly leaning more Western. I mean, they have two Korean players left. They have Kariv and Izayaki, and even Kariv is kind of like a mixed player at this point. Like, he speaks very good English. Like, he's almost like very Westernized at this point. So it'll be curious to see how long Izayaki sticks around, just because of the fact that they haven't really been playing him that much. So it's interesting. I mean, I am sad to see Kuki go, but he never really made his mark in the Overwatch League. Like you said, in Season 1, the confidence that he had was so low that they decided to put Ryu Jae Hong on tank instead of him, because he was doing that badly. So it's I don't know. It's surprising to see him step away at this point in time, just because Valiant is in the playoffs. They're on the upward trend. Why not stick it out for the rest of the season? You could be a player coach, you could help the team at this point, but we don't know what the culture is in the team at this point. So maybe he was just like, all right, I'm done with all this. I'm done with pro play. Kind of what Fisher was. He's like, I'm ready to go. So we'll never know. But it's just odd to me that he's stepping away at this point in time.
Absolutely. So, with that being said, obviously we are just coming out of the Atlanta homestand from this past weekend, and there was some good. There was also some pretty bad stuff that we got to see, which actually had nothing to do with the teams that we're playing. But we'll get into that here in just a minute. So, one of the cool things about this past weekend was we got not one but two 1v1s during this homestand, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised. I feel like the 1v1s both delivered on the goods. So we had that Bren versus Baby Bay Widowmaker 1v1. We also had the Mangachu versus the Fran Torbjorn Hammer only 1v1. And the first one that kicked things off was the Widowmaker 1v1, which was basically hyped up via Watchpoint post-show when they actually called Baby Bay on the phone during the segment, and Baby Bay ends up, swearing on the Twitch show. And then Bren released this really awkward Twitter video with a cardboard cutout of DJ Khaled, and it just kind of continued to build from there. But basically, it opens up, and, Golden Boy is there to hype up the crowd. He brings up Baby Bay, tries to do, a pre-match interview, and then out comes Bren with entrance music in this very ridiculous, oversized coat, which is, opened up. He's not wearing a shirt. He's wearing Widowmaker leggings, sandals with socks on. He went all out for this. And he spared no expense at this, so I'm sure he scarred a lot of kids, with his nipples being exposed. But I have to say, it was definitely entertaining. So Bren actually did get first blood in the Widowmaker 1v1, and a lot of that was just due to the fact that Baby Bay was just complete disrespected him. You know, he was going point blank right in front of Bren, constantly crouching, turning his head, not thinking that Bren was going to be able to land a shot on him. And sure enough, Bren comes out and jumps to an early lead. Actually gets the first 2 kills in the 1v1. Now, after that, Baby Bay basically took over. He secured like 7 kills fairly quickly, with the eventual scoreline going 9-3 in favor of Baby Bay. But, you know, there were definitely times when, you know, Bren would come out and just get domed immediately. But I have to say, like, regardless of what happened in the first two, like, rounds, the fact that he got more kills on a DPS player than a main tank player really should not have happened. Like, Baby Bay definitely went a little bit too far in the amount of disrespect, but I understand the point of, like, trying to get the crowd invested in it, knowing that really at any point he could have just, you know, flipped the switch like he did, racking up those 7 kills.
Yeah, I mean, he made it a show. He knew that he could take Bren to town whenever he wanted to. So the first couple rounds, he came out and he flaunted, and you know, he was spinning and doing all that fun stuff. He basically made it look a lot closer than it actually was. I will say that Bren did look better this time overall. Like when he was running his mouth, and then you know he ended up going against Gesture. You could tell that he hadn't really been practicing at that point. Like he had been playing Widowmaker at that point as Widowmaker, but he wasn't really doing the 1v1s. Whereas this time he did the right things in a 1v1 Widow duel. He just was clearly the inferior Widowmaker. So I will say this was very entertaining to me, just for the sheer fact that every time Bren did get hit, he looked surprised, like he didn't actually expect it. So I feel like, you know, he went into the Gesture match talking big, but I think he knew he was going to get bodied. Whereas this time, I feel like he actually thought he might have a chance. But that quickly evaporated. So the one that he took mid round, I think, was very good, and I think that was the peak that Bren will hit. And you know, he will always remember that he took those shots from, you know, Baby Bay when Baby Bay was actually trying at that point. So it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed the second 1v1 much more. So why don't we get into that one?
Yeah, you know, that Torb Hammer only 1v1. Initially, I was like, how the hell is this going to work? How entertaining can it possibly be? And sure enough, like, it did not disappoint. So unlike the Widowmaker 1v1, the Torb Hammer only 1v1 was a first to 7 at this point. And it was actually Mangachu that came out on top with a 7-5 scoreline. So, I have to say, like, in this series, I felt like the Torb tech that we saw from Mangachu definitely threw Defran off. There were a couple of times where Mangachu would fake the hammer attack to force Defran to use Overload. We saw a couple of other things, too. Like, we saw, like, the players, like, climbing on over Torb's head to, like, try to avoid the hammer swings. And, you know, with this, Mangachu officially does have the most hammer kills in the Overwatch League, at least on stage. Now, that's not from official matches. He's still, you know, not quite there as of yet. I'm pretty sure.
No, he overtook.
It?
Yeah, he overtook it. So he now has the most hammer kills on stage of any Torbjorn player. So he overtook Surefour.
All right, so at least one of them is on the board now.
Right.
But, you know, the key takeaway from this is the fact that at the end of the day, at least in this stage, this was Toronto's only win.
Yep. I mean, it's sad for Toronto, but I feel like they can turn it around. Like they basically have a whole new team that they're working with. So their actual stage woes aside, I think they needed this. But I like the symbolism of this, because this is basically Defran passing the Torbjorn hammer to Mangachu. And you know, Mangachu taking it and then hitting him in the face with it. So that was it was very entertaining. Like you said, like after Ed and I did Torb if you watch like our 1v1 with Tor, we basically just run at each other till one of us dies. Whereas this, there was way more strategy involved, and then watching the crowd get it hyped up, like you know, I don't know if I said it earlier or the first time we did the show. It's they run together, but the crowd was, I think, more invested in this than the actual like Atlanta games, because the crowd for this was ridiculous. Like every time Defran would get a kill, heck, even every time he would get like a string of hits, they would erupt. So it was really fun to watch, and I hope they continue with these 1v1s. More so like the pros going against each other. Like I'd like to see like Eileen versus Blase in like a Doomfist 1v1. Get these people on like their actual heroes, or heck, give us Carpe versus Diab in the 1v1 Widowmaker, and let's see how that goes in the headshot only. Mangachu versus a Ding on Farah. There's so many 1v1s that you want to happen at this point, that I hope they continue with it, because this is quickly becoming one of my favorite parts of it. And I'm not ashamed to admit it.
Now that being said, this weekend was not without its fair share of hiccups during the games, or even like with the crowd at certain points. So first up, I want to talk about like some of the production issues that we did see arise from the homestand. Now, it's worth noting that during these travel weeks, like we're expecting to hit a couple of snags, and Saturday in particular was really rough, across the board, and it was honestly probably one of the worst production days that we've seen in the Overwatch League ever. So basically what was happening is during Saturday, with the broadcast, there were a lot of audio issues that were happening, and of course, part of this was the fact that, that was the day where they had the match of the week, which of course was broadcasted on ABC. So like on ABC, they were using Uber and Mr. X as the casters. And there were a lot of things happening here. So, like, during a halftime show, we had Golden Boy out. They had Monty and Doa casting on Twitch. But the stream itself was very scuffed. It would see the casters, like, randomly swapping in and out. And I know, like, on Reddit, Golden Boy had confirmed that, they had 2 broadcasts being put out. One of which was for ABC, for, national TV. The other one was for Twitch. And it did seem like the ABC broadcast, at least, did have fewer hiccups, but the hiccups themselves were very recurrent on Twitch. And there was one map in particular, I think it was like on Dorado, where like it would randomly change, like even during the match, where it would go from Uber X to Monty and Doa, and then it would go back. And I know, like, Dot Esports, like, posted something about, like, a drinking game for the Atlanta homestand, so I added another rule to, finish your drink every time the casters randomly swap. And that happened quite often, so, I'm sorry if you were drinking to that. But it is worth noting that when it comes to the caster teams, especially with, the ABC, ESPN, Disney XD, all of that good stuff, it's important to have 2 separate teams, because you really need at least a duo that's catered more towards the casual audience, because that's where your greatest reach is going to be. And I feel like Uber X was definitely the better duo, at least in that regard. But, there were times when, like, kind of like in between matches where Doa and Monty were trying to, like, show highlights only for, like, nothing to happen. So there was a lot of stalling going on with the Twitch broadcast, but it was a very bad look, and we don't know, like, what the issue was, if someone was just flipping the wrong switch, but the streams themselves were definitely crossing at multiple points, so it was definitely a rough go, but at least on Sunday, it did seem to go a lot smoother.
Yeah, it seems like they were just not prepared for what they had to do. Like you said, they had 2 separate streams going out, so I feel like maybe they didn't have the staff set up in a way that made it easy to operate 2 streams at once, because you're basically doubling the production. I mean, you can keep a lot of the observers in the same place, but in terms of like the outside the game stuff, you need almost two whole production crews. You have, different cameras, you have different setups. I'm curious to see what it was like in the arena. Like, I wonder which casters were casted to the arena. If I had to pick, I'd probably say the Twitch casters were probably the ones going through the arena, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I think moving forward, I think this is a good way to do it. I think their reasoning was sound. Like, I think you're absolutely right. I think you need uh two people like UberX to break it down for the casual fans, the people that don't know what's going on, the national audience, and then you have the more robust like Monty and Doa who know the game, explain the game like everybody already knows the game. I think that reasoning was sound. I is just the execution, and like you said, after the first day, that did get much better. Twitch still had some issues here and there, but that's always hard to tell if that's like a production team or a Twitch issue or a venue issue at that point. But it's just something that they're going to have to learn moving forward, and I think this was a good first try at it. I do wonder why they did this at a home stand. That was kind of strange. Like, I figured if they were gonna do this, they should probably try to do this in the Blizzard Arena first, where things are a little more controlled. But like I said, it all in all, it didn't bother me too much. The casters changing was a little jarring, but the only part that stuck out to me was the Monty Doa speculation segments in halftime, where they were basically just making stuff up to fill time, and they're pretty good at it. Like, Monty and Doa are outside of maybe Uber, are very good at stalling for time. Like, they can talk and ramble and still kind of bring it back around. But this, you could tell they were so caught off guard, like they couldn't even do that. So I do feel a little bad for them, because they're taking a lot of shit for it. When you could tell they had no control over things. So I I I hope they clean it up going forward, because it was not a good look. But I think moving forward, the reasoning is sound. So I do understand that, at least.
And also with the hopes, and I was very interested to see how, like, what sort of turnout they were going to get. Now, I do know that they did announce the homestand weekend as a sellout. But we were a little cautious about this, primarily just due to the fact that when we look back at the Dallas homestand, they had the luxury of having better quality teams, and also the fact that there was also Houston fans there. So they kind of got to like double dip on that front, whereas with Atlanta, they basically had Atlanta fans. There were a decent amount of like Mayhem fans in attendance, but they would quickly get drowned out by the home crowd. Yeah, that was like that. There was probably like I don't know if I really hope, because I know that like Mayhem Maniacs were there. I know casual OWL fans were there. I really hope they like rounded up all of the Mayhem fans that were there for like a group photo, just so we can know for sure and get a head count to know like what status they're at in regards to if it's just a small gathering or if they could like throw on a parade. I don't know which it is yet. But I as expected, it was kind of weird, because, like, with Atlanta, they basically had Atlanta playing the third match each day. They weren't closing out the night or anything like that. So basically, earlier on, like, it was a pretty a lighter turnout. Atlanta would play, the place would be packed, and then it would empty out during the fourth and final series of each night. And I can't say that I'm surprised. And, part of it's definitely the fact that, yes, we did have weaker teams in this homestand. And while I feel like having Atlanta and New York both being there was, like, good, but the fact is, like, we already kind of, like, played that storyline where, we didn't have, like, a third match after Atlanta, had, squeezed out both wins over Anime XL prior, so there wasn't as much like storyline in regards to Atlanta, because they had like a fairly straightforward week. They had two easy opponents, so it was pretty much like a gimme week for Atlanta to pick up their first wins of this stage. But from my perspective, the way I look at it is, well, you could, yes, like it sucks that the Atlanta crowd wasn't fully present, for all of the matches. 8 hours of Overwatch is a lot to ask for one. But this is proof that even for a team that is struggling, that you are going to get a turnout for your home games, and that is a very positive takeaway. So a lot of other teams are going to look at that and feel a lot more confident moving forward, knowing that, regardless of how your team is doing, you'll always be able to get people to show up. Whether or not, they'll be like the Browns and wearing paper bags is another discussion in itself, but at least people show up.
Yeah, the Mayhems wearing trash bags at this point. But yeah, I mean it's hard to be excited about A, low tier teams, and B, games that don't really matter at the end of the day. Like a lot of these teams were already eliminated from the playoffs. Like there was, some random occurrence that Guangzhou could still get in, but at the end of the day, it really didn't matter. It was really Philadelphia and Shanghai were the only two teams that were vying for a playoff spot. I mean, sure, you had New York there as like the top tier team, but it's hard to be excited. Like even us, like even me as like a hardcore Overwatch League and Overwatch fan, I was kind of like, dude, these games are dumb. Like there are multiple times where I was like, I'll just come back and watch this later, and that's what I did. Like a lot of the games, I was either busy or I watched after the fact. I did catch a lot of, not a lot of. I caught 2 of the 4 Sunday games live. I did watch the Philly and the Shanghai games, and then I watched the Atlanta game later when it was on. But I think it was just a weaker schedule that really did it to them. I don't know how indicative you can say like the Atlanta fans leaving. And especially when you're capping off your home games with Atlanta versus Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know they were trying to create a rivalry there. The problem is the teams have to be somewhat similar in skill, and Florida has shown, traces of getting better, but it wasn't to the level that we saw with like Dallas and Houston. Like that was when Houston really started like pushing themselves a little more, like giving themselves a little more room to run different comps and stuff like that. And it, like I said, like you said, it was like their homestand too in a way. So I wouldn't be too hard on the Atlanta fans cutting out after the Atlanta games. And at the end of the day, we did get Philly versus Shanghai, which to me was one of the best matches we've seen all stage.
So outside of that, of course, we did have a couple of interesting things happen, and I do want to talk about Toronto, primarily one of the compositions that, they have thrown out, which, if you've been paying attention to Contenders Europe, you probably know what I'm going to be talking about, and that is the CV composition, aka Clockwork Vendetta. So, every once in a while we kind of get, like, this team composition that comes out that ends up, I don't want to say, like, changing the landscape of the game, because I feel like it's still a little bit too early on to tell if CV is going to do that. But it does kind of feel reminiscent of when Goats was around and created the 3-3 composition. Now that being said, Clockwork Vendetta has a very unique composition, which works because, for one, like, all of those players, primarily One Trick, the heroes that they do use in that composition. And over the weekend, we got to see Toronto Defiant running that. So if you're wondering, like, well, what's all involved with the Clockwork Vendetta comp, it primarily focuses around Orisa, Roadhog, Torbjorn, Mei, and, the other 2 heroes can get kind of, like, swapped in and out. I know Toronto was opting to run Mercy for their solo support, as well as a Widowmaker to round out the composition. But primarily, like, this composition has Torbjorn and Mei to, give that spatial control for the DPS, which allows, the tank line to move forward. And, the support line, unlike some of these other, like, very peculiar compositions, it doesn't necessarily, like, require a Mercy or a Lucio as, like, the primary healer. Like, we have seen a couple of different compositions kind of form out of this for, alternatives. And what's interesting about this one, too, though, is unlike 3-3, should 2-2-2 happen, which we're still waiting on confirmation, so chances are, like, this week is probably going to be a week that we're going to hear about it. Clockwork Vendetta actually started as a 2-2-2 comp, so this composition can have some longevity even in a role lock future moving forward. Now, that being said, we did see this come out in both of Toronto's games, and looking at how New York kind of answered it was kind of interesting because they actually ran Libero on the Bastion. Nene was doing a lot of flanking to kind of deal with this, but regardless, it worked at times and then got completely shut down other times against New York, which, is kind of to be expected. But, it did have its moments, and I know Monty kind of, like, got a lot of flack for, like, talking about, the composition without actually acknowledging Clockwork Vendetta. He's like, I'm trying to remember, like, how he worded it. I think it was, like, the first time that he's seen it in Overwatch play. But I know Toronto, when they tweeted out what they were running, they tagged the actual team in the tweet, which was a nice nod of respect there. But it's just another different look that we have seen in, this Stage 3 meta that has continued to evolve, even going into, the final week of Stage 3. So I'm happy to see different looks, happy to see, Mei any chance we get, even outside of Control, where we primarily see her. And you know what? With Megachu in the league too, we can expect a whole lot more Torbjorn shenanigans moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the Clockwork comp it's basically just like the evolved bunker comp at this point. The biggest thing you take out of it is the Bastion. Instead, you have the Torbjorn, which the turret sits there, but he's very mobile, at least compared to a Bastion that's stationary. So it's like you said, it primarily revolves around taking space and then abusing that space and splitting the teams apart. So it is a very good map. It is a very good comp. It's very map dependent for most teams in the Overwatch League. Now, Clockwork Vendetta can get around that just through, like, sheer force of will and being one tricks. But I mean, as we saw this week, Overwatch League teams will figure out ways around that. Like, they have the ability to and the talent to break that kind of comp in most cases. Now, speaking as the comp as like a whole, I think, if we do get 2-2-2, I think bunker will be prevalent, and I think we will get, these different looks in the bunker comp. I think Roadhog Orisa will become maybe the most popular tank duo, just because of how strong they are right now. I think Winston Diva might still be good. Zarya and Reinhardt, I think we'll see them, relegated back to how they were in season 1, where we'll see them on, like, King's Row, and maybe a few select other maps like Blizzard World Stage 2 and 3. But beyond that, I think you're right. I think this bunker, this Clockwork Vendetta comp could be what we're looking at in the future. And it's not the most exciting thing to watch from the bunker standpoint, but it is pretty exciting to watch how these teams will find to break it, because New York opted, like you said, for the pure overwhelming force ability. Like, they basically said, hey, look, we're going to shoot you guys until you have to pay attention to us, and then that guy behind you is going to kill you, or at least make you move so then we can kill you. So it was really interesting to see, Toronto try it, and they looked pretty good at it, so you can tell that they've been practicing it. It's just, the talent levels and the team synergy just isn't quite there yet. So looking at other teams, Houston is a team that you could see clearly, favoring this type of comp. Dallas actually comes to mind as a team that would be very good at this comp if they're running Taimu in the roster. So there's a lot of teams out there that could run this comp very well. Uh, and I'm sure we'll see more of it in stage 4, whether we get the 2-2-2 lock or not. But at least at the end of the day, we're not seeing goats all the time anymore.
Right, and that's been a recurrent theme throughout the entirety of the stage so far. So looking at Atlanta really quick, I will note that we did have one major change to their lineup this week, and that was the fact that they decided to swap things up on their tank line a little bit by subbing Dako out of the starting lineup in favor of play-in FRD. Now, when you look at the stats across the season, these two are really close at this point outside of the playtime. I know Dako is still not it, he's like almost 3-1 in favor of the playtime, but when you look at their eliminations per 10 minutes, their deaths per 10 minutes, their damage per 10 minutes, there's really not a whole lot of differential there. Like their eliminations are like 0.9 differential there in favor of FRD. I know their deaths are like 0.2 apart, so really not a whole lot of differences there, but it was something that I know Edinar and I, with our unlimited drafts, we both opted to play Dako, and Atlanta did not tweet out, like, hey, like, we're gonna throw FRD out there. So we unfortunately put up a goose egg at that position. But, it's nice to see FRD back, but it does make you kind of wonder, like, is this going to be the plan moving forward for Atlanta after they had a fairly rough stage, whether it was just, their overall record this stage or due to their strength of schedule. So it looks like maybe they're breaking up that tank line of Pokebo and Dako despite that synergy that they had built up over the years playing together prior.
Yeah, I mean, Trenchfoot said it in chat, but it almost is like, okay, who did Dako piss off? Because it's weird to pull him out right before the homestand. So we got previous reports, unverified reports, that Dako has some attitude problems, and that may be resurfacing just because Atlanta did have such a rough stage. So we'll see how Freed or Fried or whatever you want to call him this week, how he works out. He to his credit, his diva did look a little better this week, and his Sombra actually looked pretty good. Like his Sombra was actually I'd put on par with some of the others in the league. So he did look much better than some of his previous outings. Dako just always had kind of that like X factor. Like Dako's, the stat lines only tell you so much. Dako would land a couple of key kills here or there, or land a bomb here or there, and help Atlanta take the point, or push them forward, kicking and screaming whether they wanted to lose or not. Whereas FRD definitely seems like a much more middle of the road player. Like he doesn't really have that X factor that we've seen so far, but he is serviceable. So I think maybe they were, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes, maybe they're like, okay, we did pretty poorly this stage. We need to move some pieces around. So why don't we try this and see how it goes? And while their opponents weren't that great this weekend, it wasn't a bad look from Atlanta. So I feel like maybe they'll keep trying it. And I don't know if we'll ever get word of what's going on with Dako, but based on previous reports, I feel like this might be like a Fisher situation, like he was benched by the coaches as like a punishment. So we'll see how this plays out going forward. But it took me by surprise too. Like Dako had came back into the lineup and he looked like he was well acclimated at that point, and everything looked well on the tank line. They did have their problems, but they were at least firing on the same cylinders at that point. But I guess Atlanta and the coaches and whatever's going on said, all right, we need to make a change, and this is the one we're going to start with. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, and that actually wasn't like the only roster swap that we did get to see this week. I know Washington Justice were kind of experimenting this week by subbing out Sansim in favor of playing Stratus. And I have to say, like, with the Justice, the Corey Stratus DPS line looked pretty good at times, so, maybe that's going to take a little bit of the burden off of Corey, where he's not going to feel like he has to do everything, but, at the end of the day, the Justice are still looking like the worst team in the league. They have some pretty key moments at times, but, they did go winless this stage. They did not pull out that miraculous win, towards the end, like, maybe could have come into play here. But across the board, it's another look, and I feel like at the end of the day, just looking at that team, yes, the whole Giannis situation has been kind of played out. Sansim across the board has looked pretty bad at times too, so I at least like to see them make a change up there. But looking at that team now, now that we're getting closer towards the end of the season, do you feel like Wizard Yon is still going to be the guy, like, behind this team moving forward, knowing that they still haven't quite reached the mark that they're trying to hit with that team?
No, I think this is season 2 Shanghai for us. Like, I think Florida has already made their changes, so I think going into next season, they'll probably keep, a couple of key players. They'll probably keep, like, Arc, Sleepy, and Corey, and maybe Stratus. Like, I don't even know about Stratus, but I think they'll keep those 3 people and then just rebuild the team completely from there. There's so much tier 2 talent that you can pull in that honestly would be an upgrade at this point on pretty much every position outside of the ones I mentioned. That there's no reason not to, and I think coaching is the same way. Like, Wizard is very smart. He knows Overwatch very well. So we don't know if he wasn't given the tools or just, the meta isn't really to his strengths, or his coaching style is resonating with the teams. But I feel like he will be gone as well from this team. So I would expect just a quiet stage 4 from the Washington Justice. I hope they let Sleepy keep playing, because Guido did not look good at all. Like, all the goodwill that you built up with Stratus and Corey was taken out by putting Guido in there. Like, Guido just has not found his mark, whereas Sleepy, even though the Justice is struggling, Sleepy still looks like he is doing well. Like, there are talented players on this roster. They just need someone to bring them together, and someone to stand in front of them, because their tank line continues to be a problem. Like you said, the Janice narrative has been played out at this point. Sansom is not a good off tank. Like, they basically have the 2 worst tanks in the league. So this is very much reminiscent of, like, early Shanghai. Like, there is a multitude of problems, but there is, some diamonds in the rough that they can pull out of this team and go forward with.
Well, to play off of an old narrative with this team, maybe getting a good team just was not in the budget.
Rip.
So with that being said, guys, of course, this week we have the Stage 3 playoffs. We have the brackets. We'll make our predictions. I'll give you a little insight on some of these matches. So let's go ahead and move into our main discussion for tonight. So on Thursday night, we kick things off at 6 p.m. Pacific time with our number 2 seed versus our number 7 seed. So we have the Vancouver Titans going up against the Houston Outlaws. So looking back, these two teams did face off in Stage 2, and it was the Titans picking up the victory over the Outlaws 3-1 in that meeting. Now, looking at this, Houston basically went from an 0-7 stage in Stage 2 to finishing 5-2 in Stage 3. Of course, they had that key upset against the New York Excelsior, which arguably probably the biggest upset that we have seen in Overwatch League. And a lot of that stemmed from the team having abandoned opting to run the 3-3 mirror in favor of, adding a little bit more emphasis to these Wrecking Ball DPS compositions. Now, for the Titans, really a high stand-in, regardless of any sort of, evolving meta, was expected for the Titans in Stage 3. And And I will admit, like, for like a Korean team, the Titans did feel a little bit slower at adapting to the new Sombra base meta. But this has been something that they've been kind of getting acclimated to over time. So lately, we've been seeing Janu getting subbed out. They have been running a lot of Stitch as of late, and I'm expecting that trend to continue going into this matchup. But, you know, looking at this, and just seeing how the Titans have kind of gotten settled in at this point, and looking at how the Outlaws have done, where do you put the odds for the Outlaws here? Obviously, they're still going to be huge underdogs, but still to their core, that's when Houston tends to play their best. And I feel like even in this one, like, this might be the biggest odds against the Outlaws in, you know, some of these other matches that we have seen prior.
I think this is basically going to be the continuing trend of the playoffs, where the Titans knock out a team from Texas in the first round. I don't think the Outlaws have much of a chance. I would probably say 10% at best. Like, this is, you know, the Outlaws would have to pull off basically their second huge upset this stage, and you know, while I would love to say I have faith in them that they have the capability to do that, Vancouver just, I don't know. After that loss to the Valiant, they basically said, "Oh, okay, I guess we need to try now." And they went back and they went to the training room and said, "All right, so we're gonna put Stitch in now." And he's been sitting on the bench, but he's really good in this meta. And then basically looked like the Titans again the next week. Like they were extremely dominant, running a completely, not a completely, but a different composition than what we had seen them run so far. To the point where you could feel like you would honestly be confused that they weren't running that Sombra composition to begin with. Like, they looked better than teams that have been running it this whole time. So I I don't think the Outlaws have it in them to beat them. I will say that the Outlaws will probably take a map, because they do really well on control, but I don't think they will get any more than that.
So that would lead into our other match on Thursday, which is at 8 p.m. Pacific time, where we have our top seed going up against their 8th seed. So we have the New York Excelsior, who finished a 7-0 stage, going up against the Shanghai Dragons. Now, looking back, these two teams did meet in Stage 2, and it was the New York Excelsior that came out on top in that meeting 3-0. So looking back, basically with the Dragons, they were really like the first team to, you know, start to run the Sombra composition. So they've had a lot of emphasis on that Sombra and Pharah play. And, you know, they had the recent addition of Envy, which has kind of given them another element to their play. But I feel like even to this point, like, even when they are bringing in Envy and running, like, these D.Va compositions, it's still such a new look for them. Like, they still haven't quite had an opportunity to reach any sort of level of consistency with those sort of looks. Now, that being said, when we look at New York, obviously, like, one of the biggest storylines for them adapting to the meta was the return of SBB to their starting lineup, because he has been the one who has been playing Sombra for this team. And he's been looking pretty good. He's definitely been improving over the course of the stage, and, you know, if 2-2 happens, good chance, like, maybe SBB is going to be coming back to the lineup full-time even there. But looking at New York Excelsior, there have been moments here this stage where they've been having to flex Libero off to a role that he doesn't primarily play. So there's been times where we've seen Libero having to flex over to D.Va to try to counter Pharah play. And, you know, knowing how good Dane has been, you have to feel like this is going to be a primary focus for the Dragons. I'm expecting them to rely on that Sombra Pharah. Maybe they can get Libero to swap off to swap off of one of his comfort picks. And, you know, his D.Va definitely leaves a lot to be desired. And I feel like, should the Dragons do that, you know, the upset potential is there in this series, but it's just a matter of, can they actually get to that point?
Yeah, the only thing that worries me for Shanghai is we saw Guangzhou take advantage of it last week. Whereas if Guangzhou comes out like Guangzhou did, if they come out with a high DPS comp, like if they still drop the diva and come out with like another DPS, Shanghai had trouble adapting to that. And Libero is a decent Widowmaker, but SBB is a really good Widowmaker. So we could see even some even different looks coming out of New York. They have the talent there to be able to handle Afara, even if it is Ding. But I think you nailed my one key talking point is if they can keep Ding at least somewhat contained, I think this will be a fairly easy game for New York because they kind of win on most of the other fronts there. Like Jonak is still stupidly deadly. Like people are I don't want to say people are sleeping on him this season, but he's definitely not like the talking point he was last season. But he is still highly deadly, and he alone can shoot a Pharah out of the sky at times, depending on the map and the geometry. So I think Shanghai will have a little bit tougher of a match than maybe what you're thinking. But I do think the upset potential is there. Like I think Shanghai has kind of refined its formula to the point now where they can be a match for New York. It's just going to come down to actual like individual play at this point, which is weird to say because like last stage individual play almost didn't matter. It was more team synergy, whereas we're kind of circling back around at this point to if your Widowmaker can keep a Pharah contained, then that comp is almost useless. So I am curious to see how they handle it, but I do think Excelsior, unless their playoff curse kicks in, will take this one fairly easily.
Yeah, we'll see how quickly that one comes into play. But I am hoping that the Dragons do come out and take a couple of maps off of the Excelsior. But, I'm just happy to see the Dragons make another playoff after, the inaugural season. It feels good to see them having this recurrent thing happen, and so I'll probably be sticking around for playing as well. So good to see some longevity, at least from them, with their performances across the board. So this, of course, would lead into our Friday matches, which kick off at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, where our 4 seed goes up against the 5 seed. So we have the San Francisco Shock going up against the Seoul Dynasty. Now, these two teams did meet already in this stage, and that was back in Stage 3, Week 2, which went in the San Francisco Shock's favor with a 4-0 win. Now, in that particular match, Dynasty basically opted to mirror the 3-3 composition throughout the entirety of that 4-map series. And it is important to note that, because it is Seoul, there were substitutions that I do quickly want to look at. So they basically kind of split between two teams. So they played one team in map 1 and 2, made a couple substitutions, and they kept with that for maps 3 and map 4. So they started by running Marvel, Munchkin, and Zunba on their tank line, with Illicit, Toby, and Ryuji Han for their support line. And then they ended up subbing out everyone outside of Ryuji Han for the remainder of the series. So they subbed out Munchkin, they subbed out Zunba, Marvel, Illicit, and Toby. So they had their B squad, they're more aggressive, Fisher, Fleta, they were all in, and they're not going to have that option, obviously, because, Fisher had retired. So with that being said, I am expecting them to try to stick with that more aggressive lineup, but obviously they don't have Fisher, so in my eyes, I this is what I'm expecting from the Dynasty, at least the look that they're going to throw. I'm expecting the starters to be the Fitz, Michelle, Marvell tank line with Fleta, Jexay, and Hiley. Now that being said, it is Seoul, so all bets are off at this point. There's some weeks where they just completely decide just not to play Ryuji Han at all. Sometimes they've been, experimenting with Zunba on the Diva role. But I feel like, at least with this meta, especially relying on the Sombra play, that either having Fitz or Michelle in the starting lineup is their best bet. And really, either one of them are going to be a good fit for that role. And we have seen both of them playing that particular character throughout this stage. So I am really worried for the Dynasty in this one. But, the Shock have definitely slipped this stage. They have kind of had a different answer for the Sombra play. But they've not been a team that's been running the Sombra Ana composition that's been pretty prevalent. Whereas some of the other elite teams, like, Vancouver, New York, and to an extent, like, Hangzhou at times, but it's primarily been Vancouver and New York being at the forefront of that, and they've been winning, 65, 70+% of the teamfights with Sombra and Ana in play. The Shock don't have that, or they haven't shown that. Instead, they've been running a lot of Rascal on the Baptiste, and trying to rely around that, keeping people off with the lamp, and all of that, but if there's any time to beat the Shock, I think now is definitely the time for that to happen. It's just a matter of if the Dynasty are going to opt into reverting back to running that 3-3 mirror, because if they do that, that's definitely going to be a death knell for the Dynasty to pull off that potential upset in this series.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing Dynasty don't want to do is run 3-3 against the Shock, because it'll just result in another sweep. Dynasty have looked really good these past few weeks running their composition. Even losing Fisher. So I think you're right. I think they'll stick with the more aggressive composition. But I do think they have upset potential, just because of the fact that, like you said, San Francisco Shock have been looking better, and they started to show that they're willing to be a little more flexible, but they're still not quite to the level that these other teams were. Now, they did have a week off, so we don't know what exactly we're going to see out of them, but going off of past experiences, they're going to have to find a way to handle the Sombra, and they need to fix their alt management, because their alt management has been their other big problem this stage. It's been all over the place. Double support alts, grabs going out, even though, Sinatra builds them fast, but not being capitalized on. Supers, shatters have looked shaky at best. So it definitely seems like the fear of Sombra has been put into this team. And they, like I said, they started to show that they're willing to at least consider adapting. So we'll see what this week off gave them. But I do think Seoul has a good chance to upset them, based off of what we've seen before. So like I said, it's basically going to come down to how well Sombra uses that crutch against Super's forehead, and if the crutch connects, then I think Seoul has a good chance.
Yeah, like if I were going to put like a percentile, ooh, this one's kind of hard. Like, part of me is like, man, I really want to believe in my team. I'd still probably put it like 70-30 in favor of the Shock. I'm expecting Dynasty to take at least one map. But, Sombra play is going to be such a huge indicator. But, like, if they just come out and run 3-3 mirror against the Shock, like, the confidence level is not going to be there. So we'll have to wait and see. But we'll see how much Super ends up getting tilted, because if he gets tilted in this series against the Sombra play, the wheels can become undone at that point, and then the rest will be history, and Dynasty will have another major upset in the playoffs, just like they did when they beat New York in the prior one, so fingers crossed. So, of course, that would lead to our final match of the quarterfinals, and that is at Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, when we have our 3-seed, the Hangzhou Spark, going up against the 6-seeded Los Angeles Valiant. Now, every time these two teams have played, it's been very interesting. So Hangzhou Spark have actually taken both of the games against the Valiant this season. Both of these games have gone to a 5th map. Now, a couple of things to note, at least in these prior two meetings. The Hangzhou Spark have not dropped a single control map. They've taken all 4 of them. The Valiant have taken both of the assault maps. So, if one of them can take one of those out of the other, good chance that, maybe they won't follow everything exactly to the script. But they do seem to be pretty even on the other two map types. So, looking at how these two teams have done as of late, the Spark, they've relied heavily on Gushui, on the Winston, to deal with these somber compositions. And I know, like, teams have been throwing out, like, more DPS looks against the Spark, and they have struggled a little bit against those compositions. And one of the ways that they have been dealing with these DPS compositions is by flexing Godsby over to the Sombra. So they've at least started to address that. Now, the Valiant, in that last series against the Spark, were in a very good spot early on. But unfortunately, they had one of those classic C9s on Ilios, which they should have won, and it just kind of got out of their hands at that point. But every time these two teams have played, it's been a very close series. Valiant had some pretty key mental mistakes, which easily could have been, swayed or, easy things to fix. And, the Spark, they've really leveled up throughout this stage. A lot of teams have been relying on the Sombra play, and when it comes to team fight win percentages against Sombra, no team is better than the Spark. And, the Valiant haven't really been able to force them entirely off of running the 3-3, whereas a lot of these other teams in the league have had to rely on these multiple looks, but the Spark can continue to play to their strengths, which has really been something that's pushed them to the forefront of the league this stage. But either way, I'm expecting this one to be a very close series again. I honestly have flipped on this one probably 20 times already. Like, I really want to choose the Spark here, but another part of me is just like, man, like, the Valiant have been this close. I feel like this is going to be the time where they can get the upper hand, but it's going to be razor close again.
Yeah, this is 50-50 for me too. Like, I've gone back and forth, like, pros and cons and previous matches and map wins and actual compositions and stuff like that. But I think you nailed it. I think it's going to come down to, can they control Shax on that Sombra? And if they can, I think, the Spark have a good chance of winning this. Godsby has looked very good when he flexes to the Sombra, but I am a little disappointed because you can't help but think that the Spark looked this good with Adora. So if they had Crystal back, they'd probably be a much scarier team, and I feel like this wouldn't be quite as close as what we're seeing. So really, what it's going to come down to is, like I said, the Spark are going to have to control Shax, but the Valiant have to worry about IDK and Bebe, because IDK is the silent Lucio killer. Like, he will be the one that gets your team out of position. He will be the one that sets up all these phenomenal Gushui plays. When Gushui dives in on Winston, IDK is usually already there waiting for him, ready to boob players back into the Winston Tesla cannon. So the Valiant are going to need to find a way to get behind them and take out their support players, or deal with IDK when he's gating his way around. So like I said, I've gone back and forth on this one too, but I'm gonna go with Spark taking it by one map.
Yeah, right now I have leaned towards the Valiant, but I honestly don't know. Like, this is gonna be the one, like, in Pick'ems, where I feel like it's going to probably be, like, a 51-49 split between the community.
No matter what you picked wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't feel confident either way, despite, the Spark having taken the prior two matches. So with that being said, of course, with the stage playoffs, there is reseeding towards the end of it. So when we go to the semifinals, we will have the highest remaining seed going up against the lowest remaining seed, with the other two teams facing, which would be the second highest versus the second lowest. So it seems like we're both in favor of, Nurek Excelsior, the Titans, and the Shock picking up wins. We're split on the 3v6 match. So in your situation, you would have New York going up against San Francisco, and then the Titans going up against the Spark. Which, honestly, like, that is a matchup I really want to see at this time, just because, the Spark are definitely kind of at the forefront now. Like they're kind of like they're really narrowly outside of like that top 3 spot. I feel like that's as closest that they have been to New York, the Shock, and the Titans. So now's the time that I want to see them stepping up to the plate, facing these other elite teams. So you have that going on in your scenario. Mine would have Excelsior versus the Valiant, and then the Titans facing the Shock, and what would be kind of like a rematch of sorts from the Stage 1 and Stage 2 finals, which would kind of feel weird it being, like, something that isn't, the finals, but, that's just how it works with how the season is at this point. So, looking at your scenarios, who would you be favoring in your semifinal matches?
Definitely New York and Vancouver. Like, I honestly think that we'll get a New York-Vancouver final. Like, the final that we've always wanted, even though, last stage we did get Vancouver versus New York, and then Vancouver just, walked over them. I think this will be a much closer match. I think New York looks really good. I mean, like I said earlier, people are really quiet on New York for some reason. And while they tend to not show up in playoffs, they still technically have only lost 2 games to one team. So they are relatively unbeaten by most of the league. Now, granted, they haven't played, Vancouver in season play, but they are a good team. So I think you probably shouldn't sleep on them too much. Granted, they do have the playoff curse, so we'll see how that comes into play. But while I think the Spark have looked better, I don't think they're quite ready to beat Vancouver yet. Especially since, like I said, Vancouver still seems to be evolving. So like I said, Vancouver, New York, in the finals. What about you? What do you think between New York and the Valiant?
Oh man, part of me is like, well, they're going to be playing in LA. Like, surely that's going to come into play. I don't see that. I too am expecting New York versus Vancouver. But you know what? Either way, like in my situation, I wouldn't be disappointed in any of the scenarios that we could come to fruition here. I will say though, I feel like right now I am going to favor the Titans in that particular batch, and I feel like the reason a lot of people are kind of being cautious or quiet about NYXL is kind of just due to the fact that you would look at their Stage 3 schedule, and there was a lot of stuff that's just like, okay, this is a fairly easy schedule. Chances are they're going to get at least 6 wins. Of course, they ended up going 7-0. But they haven't really stood the test that a lot of these other teams have had to kind of like go through. So, that might be a reason why people are starting to, question just how good New York are at this point. But they have been really great in the team fight situation when they are in that Sombrana, composition, running the Sombra and the Ana. They've actually been at the forefront. They're the winningest team in those team fights. And I know the Titans are up there as well. I don't have the stats offhand, but I know it was pretty recent from Captain Planet. I'll have to go back and double check that. But I know NYXL had won like 70% plus of their team fights, and I think the Titans were above 60, so there's a little bit of differential between the two teams there. But, just seeing how the Titans have been able to, slowly piece things together, like, I feel like, yes, it's true, like, that NYXL, they were the first of the Korean teams to adapt to the meta. That's great. SBB's gotten more comfortable on the Sombra play, but I'm still not convinced that NYXL aren't that third or that second tier team behind the Shock and the Titans at this point, even though we have seen the Shock slip a little bit. So like that 1A and like 2A are actually very close at this point. And, barring, the Shock, losing at some point in these stage playoffs, like, I definitely feel like they're both going to be at that same tier moving forward. But the Titans are still a team that I'm going to have to back, primarily just due to the fact that you can just look at their track record. They've come in, they've dominated, we've had changes to the meta, and they still haven't really looked like they've slipped that much. We've had times where people have questioned, how this team does against these DPS compositions, and in a meta that has evolved to incorporate more DPS play as a whole, as, the stage has progressed, they have been answering the call for this meta. So, like, until we see a team beating them in the mirror, I am going to tilt in favor of the Titans. But I am going to be heavily invested in this, just like I was the last time these two teams met in the playoffs. But if you're the Excelsior, you had a great stage. You had a pretty weak schedule. A lot of other teams could have made the playoffs had they had New York's schedule, even if for some of the middle of the pack teams. But the Titans right now, I still feel like are in that top spot in the league, and I'm expecting them to take home their second championship for the stages.
Yeah, but the Shock had an easy schedule for Stage 3 too, and they still looked bad.
Mm-hmm.
So while the argument is, the Shock are one of the top 2 teams in the league, I think still stands. I definitely think that they don't quite look in the same form, at least these past few weeks, that we've seen in previous stages. Now, I will put the asterisk there that, again, they have had a lot of time off. And you have to feel like Krusty was working them, because if I notice it, Krusty is on them. Like, you guys are playing like hot garbage for the talent. You guys need to fix this shit now. So I think we will see a rejuvenated Shock. And we could see that Shock Vancouver semis. But I will put some money down on New York. Like, I think New York is going to do well during these playoffs. But at the end of the day, I'm 100% on board with you. Like, I think Vancouver is going to walk away with the Stage 3 championship, just because, like I said, they've adapted well to the meta. It's like we haven't even seen their final form yet, type of thing. Like, they've looked really good up until this point, and then they took that L, and then they adapted and they looked better. So I can't see a team beating them right now. Like, previously we made the argument that the Shock were the team that could beat Vancouver. They were the team that made them bleed and then could eventually go on to beat them. But I don't feel like the Shock are at that point yet, unless, like I said, Krusty whipped them back into shape in this off time. So, but I haven't seen that, so I'm gonna double down on Vancouver too. Like, I think Vancouver's gonna walk away and be our final stage playoff champion.
Yeah, and for me with New York in this situation, I'm really interested in seeing how Jonak is going to fare kind of in the neutral game, because this series could come down to him getting that early pickoff, allowing New York to just gain that control early on, where they're not having to worry as much about their positioning at that point. But there's a lot of hype behind their last meetup, so I'm really hoping that that's gonna be the finals we get. But you know what? If the Spark make it to the stage finals, I will be as equally happy one way or the other. So if I'm not back in the Titans for the stage 3 finals, I'm really hoping it would be the Spark, if not them. So fingers crossed. But the finals will be on Sunday this weekend, starting at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So with that being said, of course, we're still waiting on confirmation of any sort of sign-ins, should they have happened, since the roster lock. Maybe we'll hear more about rumor changes for Stage 4. So it could be an interesting week. So we potentially might have a lot to talk about on our next episode. But for now, guys, we hope everyone enjoys the Stage playoffs. Let us know who you are rooting for. How many maps you think, the Outlaws are going to be able to take. Whether or not you feel like we'll have, like, 2 major upsets, since, we have 2 former 0-7 teams. But with that being said, guys, we're going to close it out for tonight. So if you guys want to help us out, go leave us a review over on iTunes. We're always looking for ways to improve the show. I do know we have a new review on iTunes, which is a 5-star review from Godzilla Kane 42. who says, "Love you guys, and I think you should talk about the Spark since they're doing really well."
Done.
Got it.
You will like this show, because we put full faith in the Spark until we didn't.
Until we didn't pick them for the 6-3 finals. Oof. But you know what? We do own a lot of Spark skins, and I own a jersey, so we do support the team. Actually, our whole network does, to be honest.
Yeah, how could you not? I mean, they're like the lovable pink murder machines.
Okay, so here's an honest question for you, Spider.
Okay. I have an honest answer.
Okay, how much of the Spark fandom is based on the actual team versus how much of it is the love of the pink and blue color scheme?
Western, I would probably say like 60% is there for the color scheme. I'd probably say majority. Yeah, 70 wouldn't be surprise me. Eastern, like Chinese, and maybe even Korean. I'd probably say it's a little better split, like maybe like 55 for the color, because they are an anime network, so you got to figure there is some people there just for that. But yes, I think the color scheme has a lot to do with it. I know they are my daughter's favorite team because they're pink. I mean, come on, they're pink. So I will say that it is very hard to play Reaper. I'll just say that it's very hard to play Reaper, but no, it's very hard to play Reaper in a pink Spark skin because you don't come from the shadows. You like yell from across the map like, "Hey, here's a big pink target, shoot me." But yes, I think the colors have a lot to do with it. And yes, the Spark are doing well. Thank you, Godzilla King 42, for your review. I will try to work the Spark into more conversations because, as Toto mentioned, we are actually all like tertiary Spark fans. Like, unless they're going up against one of our main teams, we are generally rooting for them to do well.
Absolutely, even if it's against my Dynasty, which I'm still sour about because Dynasty haven't figured them out. One of these times, it's gonna happen. But, with that being said, vote for Gushue for MVP. He better be one of the finalists. But with that being said, of course, if you are looking for additional Overwatch-related content, we do have Overwatch Recall. I know I added some new podcasts to the directory, which is available on our website. And then, of course, every Sunday night we have the weekly Recall. Listen all of the prior week's episodes from all the different Overwatch-related podcasts out there. So find us on Twitter at OW Recall. If you would like to support our network or this show, whichever. Even if you just want to support us, it also does help out the network as a whole. We do have Patreon, so, you can do that. You could check out our tiers that start at just $1 a month. And more info can be found at patreon.com/OWL Network. So you too can join the likes of our master and above patrons, Blazing Bob, Brendan, Josabal, and Owl in helping our network grow. So I want to thank everyone again for your continued support, whether it is on Patreon or by throwing your Twitch Prime subs at us on Twitch, which is all good and it doesn't cost you anything as well. We love those too. And bits, all that good stuff. But with that being said, Spider, we do also have a number of different ways how our fans can get a hold of us. Why don't you let them know how they can do that?
Sure, you can contact the show via email at contact@owlnshow.com. The website is www.owlnshow.com. You can find us on Twitter at owlnshow. You can find us on YouTube, www.youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. You can check out our 1v1 video that we mentioned earlier, and see me lose in a Torb Hammer duel. So definitely go check that out. I put it up front if you don't want to watch the whole thing, but I'd watch the whole thing just because of the fact that there is some cheeky shenanigans going on there. You can talk to us directly on Discord, discord.me/OWLN show. We're always talking about something on there, whether it's the games or general Overwatch. So definitely check that out. If you're listening to the audio, I would highly advise you to check out our Twitch page. We are a Twitch affiliate, so you can help us by subscribing there. But our Twitch page is twitch.tv/OWLN show. We have multiple shows going on during the week. The show you're currently listening to is the Overwatch League Focus show, which is Overwatch League Network. It airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Tuesdays is the Fantasy Overwatch show, which is Owl by the Numbers, and that airs at 6 p.m. Pacific time. Wednesdays is Heroes Never Die, the variety Overwatch show. Hopefully, you guys have a little more news by then to talk about.
God, I hope so.
But that is Totem and Edinar at 5 p.m. Pacific. We also run various host streams. I know you had a little bit of a computer hiccup earlier. I think I got mine all sorted, so I will probably be back this Thursday, leveling the account. I also plan on doing a little look back teaching, stuff like that. So be sure to hit the follow button or subscribe with Twitch Prime, so you know when we go live with our host streams. Finally, just one more time, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/OWL Network. Just more ways to help support the show and keep the lights on, or in Totem's case, actually get OBS running for a change. So you can find me on Twitter at SpiderGD. Totem, where can they find you?
Well, I'm also on Twitter at TumblerDrunkCTR. But with that being said, guys, again, I want to thank you again for hanging out with us tonight on another episode of Overwatch League Network. This has been episode number 87. And really quick, I do have an update on our podcaster roundtables, which are coming up after, Stage 3 concludes. So we're looking at holding these July 19th through the 21st. So we're going to have kind of staggering start times. So on the 19th, we'll start at 4 p.m. Pacific. We'll have an earlier start time on the 20th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, with our final one being at 6 p.m. Pacific time on the 21st. So I'm still waiting to hear back from some people. I know a lot of people were out for the Atlanta homestand and are traveling. So hopefully by next Monday, I'll have a very concrete list of everyone that is going to be participating on the panels and, what podcasts are going to be involved. So more details on that will be coming, hopefully within the week, and hopefully a slew of other updates just in general with Overwatch. But again, that's it for us tonight. So I've been your host, Tumblr Drunk, joined as always by my co-host Spider, and we hope to see you guys back next week when we talk all about the Stage 3 playoffs, guys. Take care and have a good night.